My guest today is Ric Prado. Enrique, we've known each other since,
2004?
2004. I think spring of 2004 I came down and you and Eric Prince wanted to meet with me on something totally unrelated to the history of Blackwater for sure. I think it was that they wanted me to be the president of a joint venture or something with Chenega, and it was just kind of a weird thing, but great having you here, man.
It's good
Absolutely.
to see you again. It's been too long.
It has been too long. And, you know, speaking of how long in time, it took me a long time to try to condense all of your accomplishments. So I'm going to introduce you by reading these. They'll be in the show notes also. And then we'll talk about a lot of them and how you ended up living through each of these things. So, Paramilitary, Counterterrorism, and Clandestine Special Operations Specialist. Great title, hard to get on a name tag, but a great title. 24-year veteran, CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, serving as the operations officer on 6 overseas posts, which for most people, that's serving at a post, but there's probably at least 200 trips in between there and around there doing the job. Original member of the Laden Task Force, served as the chief operations officer in the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, or CTC, served in the United States Air Force in the Elite Special Operations part of the Air Force, and experienced his first firefight at age 7. So the Air Force got somebody who had already been around guns being fired. And New York Times best-selling author of the book Black Ops, The Life of a CIA Shadow Warrior.
Yep.
And we only have a minute left. No, I'm just kidding. Oh man, this is great. And we haven't seen each other for quite a while, but I did read your book, and I was fascinated. I kind of wish the book existed when I knew you earlier, because then I would have, had 1,000 questions to ask you about all that, because you're very circumspect. You don't necessarily throw all that stuff out. It's not like you drink a couple of drinks and start controlling the corner of the bar like a special forces command sergeant major kind of a guy. And I think at one point I was in your office in Tyson's Corner and I saw some pictures, and I thought I recognized some guys in there, and we determined that at least we'd been in the same place in Honduras at some point, even if we weren't there at the same time, kind of during the Iran-Contra stuff that was going on. And so that was the first connection. But I think kindred spirits. I mean, special ops guys are kind of special ops guys, and we're always trying to come up with something.
We'll have the secret handshake.
Yes, and I'd show it to the folks, but it's secret. So, in the show Instincts, what I do is I try to explore the guests' kind of early stages of developmental growth when it comes to their value system, their mindset, positive or negative, because sometimes when they start out, it's negative for a good reason. Any influences, it can be people, it can be an event, some significant event that happens, and then we kind of segue into teen years and then the professional life, which in your case we'll go into the time as a parachute jumper, PJ, in the Air Force, and describe what that is, because PJs don't have the movie budget that SEALs do. I mean, that's what a fellow Green Beret buddy of mine said one time. Let's just start with your childhood.
Yeah, I was born in Cuba. I was there for the revolution, the wonderful revolution that Castro brought in. He took over in 1959. In 1959, I had ideal childhood. I had a horse, a bicycle, a BB gun at the age of 6. And Castro took over, and the problems began. You referred to about the firefight. I guess it was like 8 years old, because just before they took over the country. And my parents had gone to the local city, we lived in town, for dinner. And I was there with a nanny, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose, because we were at the foothills of the Escambray Mountains, which is where Che Guevara was at, so they were doing a raid on the town. So being a kid that likes guns, I hear the gunfire, I go out to the window in the front, and the parapet's about this long, and so I get shot, people are flying back and forth, and all of a sudden from under the parapet, there's a guy I didn't notice, and he pops up with a fully automatic rifle and just lets out the burst. Well, you talk about auditory exclusion and tunnel vision and everything else at that age. All I remember were the shells hitting the jealousy of the window. That clink, 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 clink. I heard that more than the gun sound.
Right.
So that was my exposure to that kind of violence, and things in Cuba changed very quickly for us. My dad was biggest influence in my life, my first hero, but he was a cowboy. He was a real cowboy, ran my grandfather's ranch, and then he married my mom. She domesticated him, and he went into business. But that's how I was brought up, with that ethos of the cowboy.
You get any return fire with that BB gun, or?
No, I was actually, there's a lot of dead lizards and birds, man. I was hunting,
Yeah, I mean, you do describe in the book that your father was a huge influence. I mean, was he the main influence, or was any?
I would say him and my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. My maternal grandfather was the most stoic, coolest guy I ever met in my life. I mean, he was just an incredible dude. And but my dad was a tough little guy, very disciplined, strict but never abusive. And he indoctrinated me very early on what a man's supposed to be like, and that paid big dividends when I finally left Cuba by myself and that part of the story.
So what were some of those tenets that he?
It was like, how does a man behave? You don't, how do you treat ladies? How do you talk to people? How do you shake hands and look people in the eye? Which is, you see kids nowadays, they don't know how to do any of that.
Right.
So I was always included on everything. He would go to the Escambray Mountains to buy coffee or coffee beans for his company, and I'd go with him. And all that time was being exposed to, that ruggedness.
Mm-hmm.
Going out there in his deuce and a half or in his Jeep and stuff like that. Man of faith. He was a very strong faith, the same as my mom, same as me. And those are all those things that start forging your metal to become what you're eventually going to end up being. And that was a very strong foundation for me.
Well, at least you had a good template in both your father and your grandfather.
Yeah, I definitely.
So, Cuba's falling apart, at least from the standpoint of the people, the Cubans, and your family starts thinking about your well-being, and you're not the only child, correct?
I am an only child.
Are you an only child? Okay. So, what did they start doing, preparing for your safety?
Well, when they confiscated my dad's business, which was like 6 months after Castro took over, and then the Bay of Pigs fiasco came in, and that was Kennedy's screw up, not the agencies. But that's when my father said, we got to get out of here. So we moved to Havana because we lived in the central part of the island, and it took me a little over a year to get out. My parents couldn't get out. They couldn't get. We had visas for the United States, but you could not get the exit permit because the corruption that was there was endemic. And so I came out at the age of 10 to an orphanage in Pueblo, Colorado, through a Catholic program called Peter Pan program. 14,400 kids were taken out in a matter of 2 or 3 years. And
From Cuba.
From Cuba to the United States, yeah. So, I landed in the United States April 14th of 1962, and 2 weeks later I was in Pueblo, Colorado, in Sacred Heart Orphanage.
I mean, why did they take you all the way to the center of the country?
They were trying to, you had such a massive number of kids coming in.
Oh, dispersing them?
They had to disperse them.
Okay.
So any orphanage that would take you, any foster home that would take you, and I loved it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was great exposure. Got to see the Rockies, something I never, But, that was a very quick grow up kind of,
Yeah.
You go here, you go from the idyllic childhood to, you got 3 different cultures, 4 different languages, and a lot of pissed off kids. Nobody likes being an orphan.
Right.
And got my butt kicked the second day. Third day I made friends and kicked butt back, and that was the beginning of it. So, You grow up fast. You grow up a little faster than
Any communication with your parents while you were there?
zero.
Wow.
No cell phones, phone calls.
No letters?
Yeah, no letters. I mean,
But they knew where you were?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They knew. They had been told where I was at. But, they came out about 6-7 months later, but it took a while for them to be able to bring me home because they had to get a house and they were broke and they lost everything. So that we were definitely sub-poverty for the first 2 or 3 years. My mom worked in a sweatshop for 10 years, and my dad worked 2 jobs for as long as I could remember. But in the many interviews, I always get people, oh, poor little you. I'm like, no, my parents. Imagine taking your 10-year-old kid, your only kid,
Yeah.
and putting him on an airplane to a country that you've never been to, may not even be able to visit. And that was one of the examples that I wanted to give you about my dad. When we were going to the airport to drop me off, well, first thing is we're driving to the airport and there were 3 guys hanging from a tree by the neck with signs that said counter-revolutionaries. And my mom was in the back seat. My mom jumping over trying to cover my eyes. It was too late, right? So we get to the airport. Everybody's got guns and all this other stuff, and there was a glass wall, and that's tattooed in my brain. And my mom was just blowing snot bubbles. She was just losing it. And I told my dad, if she doesn't stop crying, I ain't leaving. So my dad took a knee, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, "I give you my word, I will see you again." That was my security blanket for all the time that I was by myself. In the orphanage, I could hear the kids crying at night. I never cried because I knew that if he had to swim to Miami, he was going to do it. So,
Wow. So you were in the orphanage and they didn't teach you how to ski before you left, I'm assuming?
No. Pueblo is a blue-collar town now. Imagine back in '62.
Yeah.
Luckily, I love horses, and that's where they would take us. Every month they would take us to the rodeo to watch the thing and play baseball and learn English. That was the immersion. That's all they taught us. See, spot, run books.
Yeah. So your parents get back, and was it 8 months, or how long were you in there?
Yeah, I think it was a total about 8 months.
And then they get you back. Was it train? Plane? How'd you get?
Flew back.
Flew back.
Yeah.
And so you try to settle into the new life, and it's definitely not the same as Cuba. But you have to decide, kind of how you're going to fit in this. Now this is the third context of your life, right? Because you had home, then you had the orphanage, and now you've got this. So what were some of the challenges you ran into, trying to figure things out, assimilating, not assimilating, high school, all those things?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I turned 11 at the orphanage, and when we got to the house where my parents were living, it was literally, a 1-bedroom efficiency apartment, and it was my aunt, my 2 cousins, my mom, my dad, and now me. And I slept in a cot. My mom and dad shared the couch. It was. We had some pets that were called roaches and rats. It was a pretty ghetto place.
The other family members came over with your parents. Were they already there?
They came out just before my parents did. My 2 cousins, because they're much younger, and their mom. And they stayed with a cousin of ours. But then when my parents came in, they took them home.
Okay.
So I mean, it was a rough area. The kids, most of them were low-income housing, that kind of stuff. Now it's all condos and stuff, but it was pretty dilapidated area. We played ball, we did this, that, and the other, and then my dad started moving me around. Every time you make a little money, move to a little better place, and so on. And I ended up at getting sponsored at a Catholic school, Corpus Christi. Is where we used to go to church, and I was on the choir. And that was my first really immersion into socialization. I was probably around 12. Again, a very different culture. My English was barely, I could ask around kind of thing.
Right.
And there were some Cuban kids in the school, but mostly were Anglo kids. No issues there. But again, it's just that, kind of adapt and move on.
Do you remember, I'm sure you do remember, your family writ large or your parents specifically, what was the impression that they had when they came to America, and did they think it was going to be a short-term stay and things were going to get settled out somehow and they'd return, or was it, that's never going to get fixed, we've got to plant our flag here and make it happen?
That's an excellent question, one I'm very proud of. I would say that 90% of the Cubans that left during that time will be back soon. I think my dad had been in country 6 months when he called us together and he says, we're not leaving. He says, this is freedom. This is what I want for my family. We'll visit Cuba when it gets up, but we're not leaving. And, we became residents the day we could become residents legally. We became citizens the day we could become citizens. And until the day he died, my dad lived with me and my wife for the last 5 years of his life. He never missed an opportunity to vote. He was so in love with this country.
Now, you and I have been to other countries. You and I have been to a lot of crappy countries. And it's really hard to convey, explain to Americans. Even if it's a family member, I mean, they trust the words they hear, but they just can't register the impression that the words reflect. And that is, these other countries that don't have these freedoms, that don't have, I mean, capitalism is a term, but it's also, you can't have capitalism with freedom. You can't have capitalism without ownership privileges and rights, right? So nobody's incented to create a Kool-Aid stand if somebody can come along and just take it once it's successful, or stop it because it's successful, right? So you go to these countries and you see all this, and then you come home and you see people that have it really well off compared to the rest of these places. And when you're young, you're frustrated, you're angry, especially anybody that's not patriotic or doesn't really understand what they have. And then there's a period where you kind of get numb to the whole thing, both ends. Going to the countries and seeing what you see and coming home and seeing what you're seeing. My dad went to Vietnam working for the Army for 2.5 years. He was the paymaster for the Chuhoy program through Max Sog B, which I didn't find out until he almost died. I thought he was just over there as an admin guy, but he was flying around with money, giving it to the SF guys, and so they could pay all the Chuhoys, the guys that turned themselves in to fight for us for money. And when he came back from that, being around all that, he was so angry if we left anything on our plates.
Oh, yeah.
If we didn't treat everything that we had with respect. I mean, any object, it was just, he was so fused into that memory, and it really upset him, angered him to see his kids act like normal American kids, right? And just, hey, we got plenty, we can waste this, we can waste that. And, what were your early observations? Obviously when you're a child, that's in the context of growing up and everything, but did you see or have that same kind of experience?
Well, I had something to compare it to, and I think that's one of the biggest problems we have in this country, and you touched on it, is we don't know how good we have it. The average American, when they go overseas, they stay at a 5-star hotel, they're there for 2 weeks, and they come back. Mm-hmm. I was doing a talk one time, this lady raised her hand in indignation. She said, well, I've been to Mexico. And I said, no ma'am, you went to Cancun on a cruise. She looked at me like, how did you know that? But because we don't understand that. Even when you visit Italy, for example, or any other country out there, that doesn't have to be third world. Third world is just things worse. But even first and second world countries, they don't have it like what we have it.
Yeah.
And so we became very, very cognizant of all the benefits. And you touched on something that my dad talked about from the very beginning. Whatever I built here, nobody's going to take it away from me, because of his experience as it was with Cuba. And so,
which is the freedom of speech and the freedom to own property. And of course, they don't teach this in regular schools anymore because there's been an effort to try to wash that out as a part of a value system. But anybody that comes to the country as an immigrant from any of these other places we've been talking about, they instantly, they're like, holy crap,
Yeah.
we get to actually own, we can build, I can have 5 jobs, 4 jobs, I can have a house, 2 houses, I can rent them out. Those aren't even allowable. They're unthinkable in a lot of these places. And I remember using an example years ago, UVA. So UVA, founded by Jefferson. Can't get any more white and English than Thomas Jefferson, right? So he founds University of Virginia, and there was this insert magazine in the Virginia Pilot, and I pulled it out, and there's a picture, and there's 9 Asian people in a portrait, and down in the center there's an old Asian guy and an old Asian woman. So it's the cover story, and I started reading it, and those 2 people and those kids escaped from Vietnam, and those 2 people worked 2, 3, 4 jobs, and the first kid that got through college became an engineer, started tithing back to the family. The second one became a lawyer. Every single one of those kids was a UVA graduate. They had the record for the most people from a single family, and they were Vietnamese. They weren't American, white-born, anything like that. They were, because they came here and they said, what your dad said, this is a place I can build something and raise my kids. And yeah, it's upsetting and all that, but I don't want this to turn into a therapy session. So where we were, not that we don't need one. So you're in high school, or you're getting ready to go to high school. You're 12. You're trying to assimilate.
Mm-hmm. There were good and bad experiences, and there were things that at the moment were I felt were detrimental. But again, I think along the way, God has always, usually with a 2x4, but along the way, kind of nudged me in the way that I was supposed to be going. And I got into martial arts when I was 15. I never played any sports. My parents didn't believe in sports. I used to work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a trade. The summers, I would always work with my dad. He got into the construction business. And so on my own, I started martial arts when I was 15. Both my instructors were veterans, both Marines. One Vietnam, the other one World War II Pacific. So those were role models. It started giving me a taste for what they had done, the duty. Went to high school. I got a little bit with the wrong crowd there for a while, mainly because I don't know, I was adventurous. I liked to fight and didn't take crap from people, and so I had good grades and bad conduct. But I came out of it unscathed. And the biggest tipping point in that part of my pipeline, usually a term that we both understand, was I was in Miami-Dade Junior College. I was going to be a marine science technician. I wanted to be a professional scuba diver. That was my passion. I used to scuba dive. I was certified when I was a freshman in high school. So I was at college, and this is 1971, early 71. I graduated in 70. And the hippies put a note, tomorrow we're going to take down the American flag and burn it. I went, other than that, but I didn't have any friends. So I had to call my homies from Hialeah, and it was 6 of us, and it was about 15, 16, 17 of them, and it wasn't a fair fight. There was beads and t-shirts all over the place. But here's the tipping point. I looked up, and I could still see it. It was early in the year, so the sky was just crystal clear, and that American flag flapping in the wind, and it was the first time in my life that I felt proud of doing violence. 6 months later, I was in Paris.
Well, you also had the Pacific Marine somewhere in your DNA by that time too. I mean, and again, symbology can be used for positive things and for bad things, right? Totalitarian dictators, they immediately try to get symbols out there, and you're supposed to, it's like a new belief system, right? You replace all the other belief systems. The traditional foundations, the cultures, they try to strip it away and rebuild it so everybody disconnects, and that becomes the new thing. So there's a lot of nefarious symbols like swastikas and things, but I think people get that. It's like people get that bad things happen, and they're always anticipating, but they don't realize how many good things happen, so they don't anticipate it. It's a weird distortion in the way people think. So looking at a flag, and sure, after 9/11, everybody gets real patriotic, right? The American hockey team wins the gold, everybody gets patriotic. You and I know, for the most part, it seems to be like a tide. It kind of grows as the competition or the event comes around, and all of a sudden it hits a peak, and then it just ebbs away, right? And then you're back to whatever your base level of patriotism is. When Pearl Harbor happened, the United States was isolationist, didn't want to get in any wars. Pearl Harbor happens, obviously, every young man's lined up, wants to be a Marine or whatever. So, but then, and it's sad that a war would have to be the thing that stimulates patriotism, but often it does, and the symbol of combat units in war is whatever their flag is. So the flag for people that have been in the military or served the country in whatever capacity is not just something that is up there flapping around on top of a library or a post office. It's something that it's a symbol that gives them a whole bunch of information about themselves because they look at it in a different way. And how upset you get when you see somebody that doesn't put their hand over their heart during a. I mean, it's in you now, right? And you fought for that flag, and you've seen people fight and die for that flag or be maimed for that flag. And all of history, it's been like that for 250 years, right? And sure, everybody else has history of dying for their flags and all that stuff, but that's okay. They can be patriots about that. But the fact that you said that you looked up there and it's an anchoring moment.
It was.
Because it's not just that you did violence; it's that you defended. You did violence to defend, and it wasn't even defend a person. It wasn't like you're trying to defend a little old lady or something. You were defending the symbology of America.
Yeah, I think that was what created the debt of honor that I felt that we had for this country. My parents by now had a nice house in Hialeah. My dad had a new car. We were, the American dream. But at that particular episode, I realized, I said, this country's not the way it is because of people just sit on their asses and don't, service is something that, and 55 years later, here I am still doing pretty much the same stuff, just in different incarnations.
I think people are all kind of basically biologically structured the same way, and emotionally they react. When they're younger, they probably react more than when they get set in their ways. I have a nephew that wasn't doing real well, was living in the basement of my brother's house for a bunch of years. And if you remember, my oldest son, who was an Air Force guy, he died after his first tour in Iraq. And I get a call like 5 months later from my nephew, out of the blue. I want to join the military. He felt so low compared to his cousin's high point, and realized this guy's over there doing this stuff in Iraq. He comes back, gives his life in uniform, and says, I need to do something like that. I need to figure out a way to be relevant, and I need to figure out a way to do something for something bigger than me. And he joined, and he did really well in the Air Force and all that. Which, I mean, that to me was like a complete 180 turnaround from where he was. And so events like that happen, and lots of families that had military, doesn't matter what the branch is, they had military. There's usually one or two of the kids kind of go down that path. And I didn't encourage my kids to do it. They knew what I did for a living, and if they wanted to go that way, they could ask. I had one son, his freshman year in college. So I got 5 kids. So he gets about 3 months in. Must have a meeting at a restaurant. Okay, so we drive to the college. He's sitting there. He's a big guy, football player, great athlete. All right, I think we were looking at this blooming onion, and we were kind of just eating the blooming onion, and he wasn't saying anything. So finally I was like, all right, so what's this about? What's this meeting about? Do you meet a girl? Let's get married? What the heck's going on? I don't want to be in college anymore. I want to stop. What do you want to do? I want to be a SEAL like you were. I go, yeah, really? Okay. Do you know anything about the SEALs? Well, just what you told me. But I mean, do you really know anything about the SEALs? Well, what do you mean? quitting isn't a part of the deal. So now you're going to quit showing up at class and having everything paid for you. I mean, you can't handle that, but you think you can handle that? Let's make a deal. If you get through your freshman year, all the way through, last day, good grades, the day after your freshman year ends, if you still want to do this, I will do everything in my power to help you get in. Prepare you, everything I can possibly do. He never brought it up again. Went through college, went through his master's program. He's 40 years old now. In his case, he didn't have a significant emotional thing that was causing him like my nephew. And I kind of knew he was just looking for an off-ramp for things being difficult. But in your case, you joined the Air Force. The reason why you picked the Air Force?
Nobody in my family had ever worn a uniform. So I didn't know the difference between Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines. In my one of my oceanography classes, there was a guy, Glenn Richardson, and he was a PJ. And
because there weren't that many of them back then.
No, oh hell, I think it was 300 was
Yeah.
what we had when I went in. And he started talking about it, and I still had a heavy accent. And I remember I went to his house, and he's showing me an album with all the photos of the training. So wait a minute, man. You mean to tell me that I get jump school, pararescue, medic, mountain climbing, and a cool hat? Sign me up. So took me down to the unit, and they got me in there.
Any part of that training process that was difficult for you?
You hit on something that is key to all of us, is the quit.
Yeah.
I'm not a natural athlete. I'm just stubborn as hell. And I was already a diver, so that was an ace in my sleeve. Not that anybody knew it. But without a doubt, my mind was set that there's only one way I'm not going to make pararescue, and that's if I'm dead.
Right.
And I remember the hardest thing we did were called towel swims. Get a gym towel this big, roll it up, one in each hand, and you're slapping. And we did 13 laps of a 50-meter pool, 100. And it was funny because on the 12th, we didn't know when it was going to stop. I'm going. If they send me one more time, I can't do that. So when we get to the end, they say, okay, everybody out of the water. And in my mind, I still remember clearly, I said, thank God, because one more lap I would have, no, I wouldn't have. And the rest was easy. The rest was easy. That was pre-scuba. That's how we got.
Yeah.
That was medical school. And from there we went to Navy underwater swimmer school, which is where I went. All my instructors were your guys.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, our scuba training was pretty infantile when I was going through. It was just basic open circuit. And the hardest part was the pool comp thing, where they go down and mess with you and rip your stuff off, and you've got
harassment swims,
to keep your presence of mind and put everything, reassemble everything, hold your breath and all that. And that was well after Hell Week, but that was the only other attrition event at Bud's. Because if you made it through Hell Week, you weren't going to quit. But panicking underwater, even though it was a clear pool, right?
It doesn't matter.
Panicking underwater when all that stuff's happening to you and not going through the sequence of checking, okay, you put a rubber band around something, okay, my mask's over here, clear, all the different things. Just, as long as they were attacking, you just had to keep doing it, right? And you never know how long it was going to be. Sometimes there was a pause, you go, oh, fine, it's over. Then bam, they'd hit you again. That was also worth at least 1 to 2 students every class.
Yeah, the attrition rate for us, we had 6 weeks, they call it in-depth now. They used to call it preconditioning when I was in. And it was 2 days. You were in the pool every day for hours. You were then doing PT for hours. And that's what you did. You cleaned the room, you ironed your fatigues, and you did PT. And we had every Thursday, the PJs would give a talk to the next basic training class.
Okay.
And they would say, if you want to come out and try out with us, Saturday morning at the pool. And every Saturday morning, there was 20 or 30 kids out there, and maybe one.
And what year do you think that was?
That was 1972.
Okay.
Yeah. Early 72. I'm talking like February of 72. And, I went through 6 iterations of this because, I was there for 6 weeks, and 6 times, we're doing our show, but these guys couldn't, And it was funny, our mutual friend Steve Bailey, said to me one time, we were talking about, it's kind of the same thing, going through the pipeline. You have this Adonis, 6'1", blah, 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 and he quits. And Steve says, yeah, well, we call them spandex athletes. And he says, the problem with those guys is that everything comes natural to them.
Yeah.
And then they don't want to work this hard. In my case, I had none of those gifts. Mine, like I said, the only gift I had was I ain't quitting. And of course, that served me throughout my life.
Yeah, I was the senior enlisted guy in charge of the first phase of SEAL training. So 26 weeks, 3 9-week blocks. So the real selection process is in the first 9 weeks. And that's where Hell Week is and all that. And we were under Navy investigation because a Navy sailor who placed second in the Hawaiian Ironman came to Buds and quit on a bay swim at the end of the second week. And he'd been sponsored by a fan who was the admiral, it was Sink Pack in Honolulu. And he was so proud of this guy, and he pulled all the orders to get him to Buds. And then he hears he quit in the water. He says, there's no way he quit in the water. They made him quit. They did something. And we had all these investigators land on us and put us in different rooms and everything, like we shot him in the water or something. Yeah. He just couldn't handle the cold water. He wasn't a great athlete. It was all up here, right? It's always up here. And then also as an instructor watching 100 plus people start, and you end up with 20 something that you hand into the next phase. And I was talking to another guest about this, who was a professional baseball player. You look at this thing and you're like, okay, well, how come the little stubborn guys are making it, but the guy who played, wide receiver for, the Oregon Ducks football team, who's faster than hell and stronger than hell, he quit on the 3rd day. What? And it's exactly, every one of us who came to the same conclusion. It's so easy to do the physical things that they never created any kind of scar tissue or a self-reflection process where you finally get to a point, well, if I really want to do this, I just have to suck it up and not really care about the pain or even failing. Being the last, I was the worst runner in my class. And you'd see guys do things until they passed out. And one of the sayings was, they can kill me, but they won't eat me. Or I'm going to keep doing this until I pass out, and that doesn't count as quitting. So then they have to pick me up, give me water, and so
all's fair.
Yeah, but quitting is the ultimate, the ultimate final decision you make, right? So, but as part of the Spec Ops, the whole mentality of it and everything is, you can only do so much in a training environment, safety-wise, to try to figure out if you have the right people coming out and going into the units. You can't shoot at them really, and you can't beat them up and see if they can survive that. You have to play all these games, right? And
test their mettle.
Physical stress. Yeah. Where did you go when you became a PJ? I mean,
Homestead Air Force Base. I did 2 years active. I wanted to go to Vietnam. That was the reason I went in, obviously, because there was Vietnam years. But by the time I got my beret, it was real late 72, early 73. Vietnam was pretty much winding down.
Yeah.
So I was down there with the 301st, and yeah, it was great. I mean, I'm jumping every week. I'm doing scuba jumps. But I wasn't making any difference. So I went into the reserves, and again, I believe that God has a path for us, and if you have the backbone to follow it, you'll do well. But He also grooms you along the way. And there were episodes like that in my life. So when I came out of pararescue, I was a very different person. I had conquered so many things that I never even thought. I didn't know how hard it was going to be. We had our version of washouts. 3 o'clock in the morning, hoses in your mouth, all that crap. In January in Texas, and the attrition was always there. And as you know, the water is the biggest challenge, I think, to all the guys and gals. But through that, I went into riding rescue for Miami. I did that for 6 years. Again, the Prado luck. One of the senior sergeants in the reserves there was the captain for the rescue for my Miami Metro-Dade, and he pulled me aside and says, "You want a job?" I said, I've never wanted to be a fireman. He says, we're starting the, the paramedic thing. So I did that for 6 years, and that was rewarding because this is Miami in the 70s.
Yeah.
This is the drug wars. This is the drugs. I became a pretty damn good medic. There was a time when I used to tell people, if I'm ever hurt, I'd rather have a guy like me taking care of me than a doctor.
Is that the era of Scarface, the movie? Was
Yeah,
all
that stuff is going on. I mean, we had shootings every week, overdoses all the week. Sometimes we had both. A guy on PCP shoots his girlfriend, true story. And we walk in, and there were two cops trying to get this guy. The guy was like 5'10", 170 pounds. He's swinging the two cops like they were nothing. And I was pretty beefy back then. I weighed about 180 pounds at 5'7". And my partner was this big black guy, Frank, super cool dude. We look at each other, go, I go low, you go high. We hit it because this guy had shot the girl right under the breast, and she's there gasping in the bed. But we can't take care of that until we take care of this. This guy was literally foaming at the mouth, and we were able to handcuff him. Then we saved her. So those became the purpose, but it still wasn't enough.
But isn't it strange how, Louis Pasteur's got this quote, chance favors the prepared mind. So at that point in time, you had no idea what you were about to get into.
Yeah.
But it was prepping you for that.
Yeah. And I believe that that's been, my life altogether. Just sometimes it hurts, but you look where I ended up because of this. That's where I was supposed to be. So, I applied for the agency in '74, actually, the same time I was getting into the fire department. And I told them, I speak Spanish, I'm a PJ, blah, 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 I want to serve my country. And they came back basically telling me, we're firing, not hiring, because this is right after the Vietnam.
It's the Stansfield-Turner thing, yeah.
And so that's why I went into the rescue. And then in 1980, early 80, I applied again. And this time, because of my substantial credentials, not only as a PJ, but as a writing rescue for 6 years in Miami, Special Activities Division Ground Branch asked me if I wanted to work contract to be a team medic for training or for operations. So I did that for a few months. I would take 2-3 weeks off and go. And then come Reagan, when he took over and declared war on communism, the agency did not have a single native Spanish-speaking paramilitary guy. They had native Spanish-speaker guys that were case officers.
Right.
They had, as you know, ground branches, all SEALs, it's all from the SOF community.
Right.
But they didn't have, they had the paramilitary, but they could not pass.
For most people listening, Stansfield-Turner and under Carter, basically they went in and they investigated the CIA, had open hearings, and said that they were involved in way too many wars, banana wars, and the quote-unquote secret wars in Laos and Cambodia. So the decision was to basically neuter the direct action operations side of it, not the intelligence collection and analysis side. And in doing that, what they did, and again because it was classified, nobody was aware at the time, they had this large population of qualified, extremely experienced, multiple languages all over the world, former military, fill in the blank, from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and all of a sudden they're just cast aside. And I don't think I ever told you this, in '79, there were some inside guys that tried to reconstitute that. So they created a program, and so SEALs, Green Berets, Force Recon guys, not a lot of them, but we got pulled in and ended up going to a southern state and some other places and started getting trained. And I actually got to go in the vault. That's where I heard the story about how decimated they were. And the idea was if the balloon ever went up, because since they didn't have anything left, they were going to pull the Rolodex out and grab all of the people that they'd run through this little kind of junior starter program, because they'd have to have something.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead.
No, I mean, no training whatsoever. They called me, it was a Thursday night. I had just gotten divorced, so I was not a happy camper. And I had just come back from a 7-mile run, and the phone rings at the house. And the guy tells me, I knew who the guy was. He says, have a job for you. I said, what is it? He says, I think you're going to like it. I said, you're missing the point here. Is it contract, or are you bringing me in full time? If it's contract, I'm not interested. He says, oh no, this is full time. I said, sign me up. He says, you want to know what it's about? I said, nope. That was on a Thursday. I was at headquarters on Monday. Medicals, I already had the polygraphs before because I was working contract with them, so I had the basic polygraph, then I got the advanced. And couple of briefings on the situation in Nicaragua, and get your ass on a plane and go down there to Honduras. And and for the first 14 months of that program, I was the only agency officer allowed in the camps, because I was there as Major Alex Mendez, a Honduran, and I pulled it off.
And you were supposed to be an advisor to him?
Well, it was everything. I mean, all the training.
I mean, was it supposed to be an advisory thing, but you turned into basically calling the shots? Or?
Well, it was the best job I ever had because I had no immediate adult supervision. And I didn't know what, for example, we got in several firefights. I remember the first time we got lit up, they made the mistake that they didn't know that I had a truck full of 82 millimeter mortars because I was going to teach a mortar class. So they shot at us, we shot back, and all this other crap. So that afternoon, we gave them the class, and then first light in the morning, we destroyed their camp. So, I didn't even write it up. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just, I'm out here, my boss had told me, make yourself essential. He said, everything comes through you, so all the training. Headspace and timing on a 50 cal. I didn't know how to do that. There was one of our OTS SAD guys would teach me for 2 or 3 days, RPG 7s, all that I was teaching. And I slept in a jungle hammock Monday through Friday for 3 years. And it was the best job I ever had.
So basically it was train the trainer, turn around, train the fighters. Yep. Train the trainer, train the fighters. Yep.
And in some cases, you end up being in the mix with them. I think that the most fun that I've had in the agency was I put together a team of mosquito divers. And I was in the Mesquite, they're the Native Americans of that area. And they're hunters, I had my scuba badge. And one of the guys says, excuse me, Major, you're a scuba guy? I said, yeah. He says, well, we're divers too, we're lobster divers. So the agency came in shortly thereafter with a thing, like said, listen, we have to come up with a special op. Something that convinces the Sandinistas that we're not a ragtag bunch of guerrillas out there. Something that's good left hook. That's how they describe it. So I came up with the idea. I trained, started with 6, 4 made it through, 2 washed out. And we blew up Puerto Cabezas Pier with a 80-pound plume charge. And that was all, again, no training other than my scuba.
Right.
And then we tried to do it again on the other side for Corinto. This is Puerto Cabezas on the east side of the country. And we were doing, they asked us to do Corinto. And I told them, my mosquitoes ain't going to cut it with this because they don't like the Spaniards. They don't like the white guys. They don't get along. They don't trust them. And sure as hell, that mission went belly up and it became a mess. They got stranded. And I went in and I got my guys out. That was my first medal in the agency. And the first four guys, I did a helocast in the Gulf of Fonseca in Nicaraguan waters to get my guys. I had stable rigs, homemade stable rigs on the helicopter, and got my guys out. Then we went back that night to get the other boat, and we got lit up like Christmas trees. They knew we'd be there because we had a helicopter in their area and everything else. So I came back. I went for, you talk about Hell Week, it was about 48 hours of no sleep. When we came back from the boat, the boat captain was a Cuban contractor. He had his big yellow raincoat thing. I had sweatshirts and jeans. I was so wet and so cold that I literally got into the little part of the cabin, took out everything and got in there so I could, get some body heat.
Yeah.
But that got me my first medal in the agency for that rescue.
It's too bad they don't let you just keep doing that kind of stuff, And did you? So you got a medal, but did anybody tell you shouldn't really have done all that before they give you the medal? Like, shouldn't get personally involved, or shouldn't get? No.
I mean, the Leon Williamson was the base chief. We were out of Amapala, which was one of our forward bases. The Salvadorian piranha boats ran out of there. And when I came back, I was on the radio all night with my guys when all this stuff was going on. So I went to Leon and says, my guys are stranded and I ain't leaving them. He says, well, I guess you got a plan? I said, I do.
Yeah, that's great.
And he just looked at me, he goes, I expected no less.
Yeah, I mean, special ops, SEALs and Green Beret, especially down in those days, training working with the salvos in the rules of engagement, where you don't engage, you don't go with them, you don't do this. And of course, you know the machismo problem, just like in the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
You know, you don't have a beard, you're not really a man, and down there, you know, you don't walk the walk, right?
Yeah.
You say bye bye, go have fun, you know, and let them go in harm's way. So you don't tell anybody in those cases, at least in the military context, and you kind of ease out on a training mission that happens to be by the volcano, that happens to be where the bad guys are. And unfortunately, you know, because, and I think the SF Association is trying to readdress this, but no medals, no nothing, because you couldn't tell anybody. You go out there and just, especially if you got to hit a good, like a training group, so they bring them in for, like, you know, their first kind of almost an op, and the intel would say, hey, the instructors are going to take the trainees up by this one particular waterway, and those guys would go in there and just destroy them. You know, so that whole training class is gone. And anyway, but then you couldn't say anything. So I've only been able to do a couple of those things, and I've talked to lots of guys that did it, and they always get a big, you know, you get a twinkle in their eye, and you can just, it's like they're, you know, 28 years old again and having fun.
You know, I think that the thing that affected me to the positive the most is that I didn't know a damn thing about the agency. I didn't know the do's and don'ts. Nobody sat me down and said, you cannot cross the border.
Yeah.
Or if you get captured, you know, the thing is ruined. None of that was ever told me. I was never taught any of that. So for me, it was like my boss said, make yourself essential, and you hit on it. You got to lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way.
Right.
So, you know, these guys, hand to hand, I was at it. The guns, I was at it. All that training. But every once in a while, and all our camps, we had 10 camps. They were all along the border. And there's no sign that says, you're now entering Nicaragua or none of that stuff. So you could be 300 yards from a Sandinista camp. And as a matter of fact, that was the first time we got lit up, because they knew we were there.
Yeah. All right, so that's the young, wild, and crazy Ric Prado. So let's push into the Bin Laden unit and kind of the last part of your career, and whatever you want to touch on, whatever you want to highlight, because a lot of people think they know a lot about all of that, and there's a lot of good documentaries out there, and you've been on a lot of podcasts and you've been interviewed, and your book hits a lot of those things. You probably have done more to explain a lot of this. It's like Gopher Black is not a big TV kind of personality and everything. Great guy. You know, he was at my son's interment at Arlington, and but go ahead and tell me.
Yeah, I had just gotten back, and I was the head of the Palestinian branch in CTC, Counterterrorism Center. And the chief of operations then called me and said, we are starting a task force against one single terrorist, and they want you to be the senior ops guy and be the deputy chief of station, because it was a station, Alex Station. Mm-hmm. And Mike Schroyer was an analyst. He was the chief of station, and I was the DCOS. And I said to Jeff, I said, so who are we going after? He goes, Osama bin Laden. I went, who? He goes, exactly. So we started the task force January of 1996. It was 8 analysts, 2 operators. One was an Arabic speaker, Egyptian American, and we had an FBI component there. And within 12 months, our holdings on bin Laden had tenfold intelligence that we were getting. And we kept giving the administration, well, the 7th floor and the administration, proof of what this guy was up to. Everything we were getting from unilateral sources, overhead of training camps, liaison services, and everything else said, this guy is bad, this is what he's building, and the administration would not do anything about it. And I did that for almost 2 years. It was like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill and getting disappointed. Imagine, fast forward a few years, and now I am chief of operations of the Counterterrorism Center, and 9/11 happens. And there was a lot of guilt for me there.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if they would have allowed us to do something about bin Laden in 97 or 98, it's like shooting Hitler before World War II started, kind of stuff, right? So, that angst was there, but again, the 2x4s teach you, that pain, I turned it into an idea, and I came up, I left the chief of ops job, and the program, it's at the end of the book, it's all clear by the agency, so I can talk about it. The concept was, give me 3 names of bad guys in each organization you want to target. We'll go out, do find fix on them, patterns of life, everything else, whether they're first world, second world, third world country, and we made book on everybody. The first 6 that they gave us, we made book on 5, and 1 got arrested somewhere else. And so the concept was this, because 9/11, we knew that something was going to happen, but we couldn't do anything about it. And part of the motto of CTC is disrupt and preempt, but we didn't have either. So the concept here was, if now we're getting intelligence that Hezbollah is doing something or Al-Qaeda is doing something, I already have 3 of their senior guys bracketed, and all of a sudden you neutralize all 3 of them, one way or the other, compromise, shoot them, kidnapping, whatever. What do you think that organization is going to do? They're going to hit the brakes, would penetrate it. And
Especially back then.
Back then, yeah. So it would be the kind of thing that would have. So that was my last job in the agency. I did that for 2 or 3 years, 2.5 years. As a matter of fact, I got to go through the Draeger at Bud's. Me and Steve Bailey, Admiral Callan signed the paperwork with Jose.
Did you get a Draeger T-shirt?
Yeah, of course. So that was my last job in the agency, and everything in between. I mean, I've had such a blessed life. There's in the morning that I don't, when I do my prayers, and I go, I don't know what I've done to do this, learn this, but thank you.
That's been an incredible and full life up to this point, because you're still here. Thank God.
Thank God for that.
And you and I, we met each other at Blackwater, doing some things in concert with each other, and other things were different. But I started out doing some things I thought were making a difference, and then I ended up being in charge of marketing and communications and advertising and all that kind of stuff, which wasn't as cool. But
Important.
But in the time that I was touching those other programs and things, we kept a lot of people safe. We prevented a lot of assassination attempts, and both State Department and agency
I
side.
lost 41 men doing it too.
And we lost 41 people, and probably 3 times that, wounded and,
Oh,
and messed up
yeah.
too. But maybe a little Blackwater things for another day. If you want to come back someday, it'd be
My
great.
pleasure, yeah.
All right, Rick. Man, this has been great.
It's good to see you again, man.
Thank you very
Good
much.
chat.
Great to see you too.